The first question that everybody asks is, should you run the downdraft vents during the cooling? And I say, heck yeah, why not? And here's why. Most of the time, the clay body can take the rapid cooling. Now, we don't want to give it abrupt thermal shock, but this is a pretty gentle air exchange through that EnviroVent. 2 to 3% of the air that's being discharged is actually coming through the kiln. So it's not very much. But once we turn off those heating elements, that first part of the cooling curve, if you will, is very steep. You asked, how long does it take to go from 1824 to 1823? And I said, about that much time. It's quick, okay? And it'll continue down into, once the kiln stops glowing orange, then you get into this dark heat, that convective heat that's kind of sticky. It doesn't want to go away very fast. The infrared heat goes away pretty quickly. But once you get down to around 1,000, it starts getting hard to get the heat out of the chamber, okay? So now let's say you're safely below quartz inversion, you're below 1,000 degrees, and this kiln is just taking forever to cool. There are some tricks. Running the EnviroVent will help. It'll get some of that convective heat out of there. And then some other things you can do is set up a little bit of wind chill for your kiln, okay? It's like you take the hot dog here and cool it off, okay? So if you will, and if you can remember back to that very first slide I showed you about setting up the room, you might want to put a box fan in that kiln room just for this purpose. And it doesn't even have to be a big box fan. It could be a little 10-inch, 12-inch fan. And if you'll put it out in front of the red box, below the room temperature air, right at the red box, the air will flow around the kiln and take some of that heat away. And it's exactly like wind chill. We get a little microclimate set up around the outside of these kilns, and if you can get that hot air away from there, then the kiln chamber is encouraged to give up more heat, okay? So you can take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours off of that cool down curve by putting a little air exchange against the outside of the kiln. One of the reasons I love this technique is you've still got the lid down, all the PEEP plugs in, and there's no room temperature air directly coming in contact with the pieces, okay? Because that direct thermal shock can craze the glaze. If the outside of the glaze, you know, that outside layer of glass cools much faster than the clay body itself, what's gonna happen? You know, that glaze is gonna shrink and the pot isn't, something's gotta give. So we want give the piece a fighting chance to come out of the kiln intact, would you? You know, if we cool it down uniformly, the glaze will shrink at the same rate as the clay body and life will be good. But if you prop that lid open and run room temperature air right up against the skin of that pot, you run the risk of damaging the glaze layer. See, remember we were talking about the preheat and there's a million ways to candle? There's also a million ways to handle the end of the firing. And do you pull just the top plug or pull the bottom plug, or no plugs, or just the top and the bottom? Or there's a couple cautionary notes. If you're below 1,000 degrees and you say, good, now I'm safe, I'm going to pull out the very top PEEP plug and the very bottom PEEP plug, you have created a dangerous situation. And the reason for that is just convection again. You're going to pull cold air in through that bottom one, and the kiln will eject a lot of 1,000-degree air out of the top one. And if you stand right here, right next to it, you will burn yourself. So don't do that, please. Now, the next question is, at which point are you pulling those PEEP plugs? Because you know you're not going to do it at 1,000. What? 600? Let's say for just purely hypothetical, we decided to pull those PEEP plugs at 600 degrees. Okay. It's a function, you've got room temperature air coming in contact with a 600-degree pot. Where's your glaze break? How much thermal stress can the glaze take? At some point, it's just you're asking too much of the glaze. So if you're seeing crazing and cracking, it was probably too early. It can only handle so much. All right. So I would recommend you don't pull the plugs out till a very low temperature. The best part, I think, is this next slide. Hang on here. There we go. This one right here. If you're using tongs to unload your kiln, you're still way too hot, okay? So no tongs, no oven mitts. And everybody's like, what? He is no fun, man. That's right. This is another comedy portion of the program where people see 125 and they go, he has got to be smoking something. I mean, that just can't be. Yeah, that's right.
He's already
Hot,
home.
hot, 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 hot. Yeah. Be careful, honey. It's still warm. Right. Yeah, see? All right.
Jim, that's unloading.
What are plugs?
The plugs, I mean, I would think if you go maybe 400, 450, something like that. But I know I can get laughed right out of the room. You can get room temperature air in there. Work with that fan trick. Leave the enviro vent running. Pull the plugs as the last resort.
What about cracking the top?
Crack the top as the last resort. You know, those things, they're both going to let room temperature air hit the pots bad. So do them as a last resort.